This comes from Roger, and he's in Pueblo, Colorado. He writes, Eddie, I am nearing 60 years old. My question, why are classic legacy rock artists replacing their material in limited edition numbered box set formats that are very pricey, or repacking their material, not replacing, repacking? A few examples. The Beatles released the singles collection on 7-inch, 180-gram vinyl for $230. Black Sabbath, the vinyl collection, selling for about 200, limited to 3,000 copies. Pink Floyd, the later years, listed for about $340. I am a longtime That Metal Show fan and Trunk Nation fan. Roger in Pueblo. Well, Raj, it's couple things here. Whenever you're looking at reissues, first thing you have to kind of ask yourself is, was the artist behind this? Was the artist even involved in this? Did they sign off on it? Now, one of the reasons why some of these things are limited editions and limited to a certain amount of copies is because, quite honestly, there's not enough of a demand for them to really sell more than that. So it's a really appealing thing to fans of these artists, because if you're going to plunk down that kind of money, it's nice to know there's not a limitless run to it. It adds a little incentive to you to possibly buy it. So that's one part of it. Why is it happening? Well, in most of these cases, the artists do not control their catalogs. But even if they do, if you have control of a catalog, whether you are the artist or the record label, what you want to do is monetize it. It's something you own that you want to monetize. So there is a constant initiative to figure out how to take old material or previously unreleased material that probably most fans own already and sell it to you again and get you to buy it again. And that's why a lot of these box sets and special editions and remasters and all the other tags that are used, or in some cases gimmicks that are used to resell you something. And look, people fall for it. One of the guys that falls for it, you're hearing right now, me, because I like that stuff. Now, that being said, in full disclosure, I don't usually have to pay for it. It's usually sent to me so that I can look at it and talk about it and tell others about it. But there's good and there's bad in all of it. Some of it is over the top and unnecessary and has stuff in it that you'd never really want to listen to or listen to more than once. And others are great versions of these records that are cleaned up, remastered, resequenced, better packaging. So it's very much case by case. But the reason why it's happening, Roger, which was your question, is just because it's a way to monetize the catalog. You've got to come up with something that puts a fresh coat of paint on something to give people some incentive to want to buy it again. And that can be packaging, vinyl reissues, remastering, whatever the case may be. It's just about trying to make money. Some worth it, some clearly not. This comes from Andy from Florida. Andy writes, Edward, and he put in parentheses, said in my David Coverdale accent. Yes, that is how David talks to me. Edward, dear friend. Andy writes, Edward, can you please take a moment and talk about the last time you talked to Eric Carr and one of your best memories of him? Thanks for all you do, Andy from Florida. Getting a lot of questions about the late, great Eric Carr. I think it's because the anniversary of his death just passed not too long ago. Hard to believe it was 28 years ago, about a week ago, that we lost Eric. Last week, there was a lot of people online remembering him, which is very fitting and very good to see, myself included. I posted some photos and discussion about him. Andy, in the sake of trying to be brief here to get to as many emails as I can, because I've told this story before and I don't want to be redundant, but my one of my favorite memories of him, we had so many. He would come to my radio studio all the time. We'd do interviews. We went to some shows together. We hung out in L.A. a couple times together. I think that one of my fondest memories, though, was the Kiss tour. I believe it was Hot in the Shade at the Meadowlands Arena, and I got to intro the band, and he was behind the curtain throwing drumsticks at my back while I was talking to the audience, totally nervous. Just a prankster, a great guy, a great friend that I miss so, so much. My last time talking to him, I remember vividly, because it was a couple days before Thanksgiving. Remember, Eric died in 91, and this is pre-cell phone and all that. And I want to say, I may have been living at home at that time for whatever reason, or I may have been home because it was Thanksgiving. I just remember I was at my mom's house, the house I grew up in, and the phone rang, and it was him. So I must have still been living at home at that time for him to have called my parents' house. But I got on the phone, and I was really excited to hear from him because I knew, of course, I was in touch with him, and I knew what he was dealing with health-wise and how scary everything was. And he had called me because he believed and was told that he had been given a clean bill of health from what he was battling. I'm not to this day fully clear on what ultimately took Eric Carr's life, because he was battling more than one thing. He had, my understanding was, a form of cancer in his heart, which I've never even heard of before Eric. But it was something along those lines. But I'm pretty sure that what ultimately killed him was some sort of heart attack or stroke or blood clot or something like that. But the reason why I'm saying this is because the conversation when Eric Carr called me was of great joy, because he had been told, after going through chemo and a bunch of things, that he was on the road to recovery and had gotten great news about his health. So he called me to share that news with me. And he was extremely excited, as anyone would be, as was I, to hear that he was getting better and had made great improvements in his health. So I said to him, congratulations, this is amazing. This is the best Thanksgiving news. Get some rest. Take care of yourself. We'll hang out soon. And then I'll never forget, he said to me, hey, keep your eyes open for some gigs for me. Now, he always wanted to play with Ace. And remember, I was Ace's A&R guy, so he loved Ace. And Gene and Paul would never let him play with Ace at a public show. But Eric Carr was completely convinced and completely knew that Eric Singer was already starting to work with Kiss. And he was completely convinced that if he was fully healthy, he was going to still lose his gig to Eric Singer. And I will never forget him saying to me, hey, keep your ears open for some gigs. And I got so mad at him because I was just like, dude, would you stop? You're not losing your gig in Kiss. The fans won't stand for it. Stop. Get rest. Get 100% better. The gig will be there. And I'll never forget, he said something to me, hey, okay, whatever you say, fine. But listen, I think Whitesnake might be looking for somebody. Can you make a call? And I kept getting so mad at him. Would you stop with this nonsense? You're just being paranoid. He goes, no, I'm telling you, they're not going to have me back. And son of a bitch, he was right, man. He saw that writing on the wall. He was completely convinced Eric Singer was going to replace him, and he was right. Because in retrospect, I kind of believe that he was right, that he was going to be replaced no matter what. And I also remember at that time, I had connected him with a friend of mine who was working at MTV, because Eric had developed this sort of a cartoon. I think it was called The Rockheads. And he was trying to get traction on that and trying to get that cartoon out there. And I connected him with a friend of mine at MTV who he had a meeting with and was going to hopefully get that turned into a cartoon. And something happened with it, but it never fully got done, I don't think. But I get a lot of questions about Eric, and I'm happy to answer them because he was just a wonderful, wonderful guy that deserves to be remembered and certainly celebrated.